Hello and welcome to another edition of And Did Those Feet, the podcast that explores the world of English and sometimes Scottish, British football in the years, 25 years after the war, from 1945 to 1970. And I'm joined as ever by Karl Hemsley. Hello, Karl.
Hello, Peter.
Karl, we're going to discuss the 1960 European Cup final between Real Madrid and Eintracht Frankfurt at Hampden Park in 1960, May 1960, said by some to be the greatest club game that's ever taken place on British
Yes.
soil. Um, does it have any relevance? I mean, here we are, however many years on, 50, 60 years on. Does it have any relevance to the way we play football now?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean,
Are there
watching the
lessons
game
to learn?
through, watching the game through, it's relevant in terms of it just being a fantastic game to watch. There's clearly a huge amount of skill on
With some
display.
tremendous goals, by the way.
Yeah,
I,
absolutely
I
fantastic.
particularly like the third goal by Real Madrid, where
Oh, it's
Puskas
amazing.
leathers the ball into the net from an acute angle. And
Yeah.
I mean, the level of skill in this game is formidable. Um, Real Madrid were coming from a position of some strength, weren't they?
They were. So they we're talking, of course, about the early days of the European Cup, and this was the fifth time the competition had taken place, and the previous four times Real Madrid had won all of them. So the 1960 was their fifth was going to be their fifth win. So they were certainly very strong. Although it is interesting that we think of this as their pinnacle, yet in both 1959 and 1960, they actually weren't Spanish champions.
No, they weren't. That's
Barcelona
right.
were,
Barcelona, that's right
which
enough.
is
Yeah.
which is interesting. I mean, it obviously shows something about the strength of Barcelona as well, because this was an absolutely fantastic rate,
Curiously
incredible
enough,
rate Real Madrid set.
Eintracht Frankfurt weren't German champions either. Not in that season anyway, not in the season of 1959 to 60. So we had two
Yeah.
teams actually who were not, I think Real finished second and Eintracht finished third in their leagues. Um, and so they weren't actually, I mean, in league form, they weren't actually at the peak of their powers. But my word, in this game, they were at the peak of their powers. And
Yeah.
I think the game had a huge impact on British football in this sense. Number one, because it's so very different from the football that was being played in Britain, in England certainly,
Yeah.
and also I suspect in Scotland, perhaps less so in Scotland,
Yes.
because the Scots always had the passing game. And but I think that this game was so inspirational because partly because it was so different. And it laid down a template to play a different kind of football. We'll go into this in more detail later in the discussion. But I think it also inspired a generation. I mean, if you look at the quality of the players that come through in Scotland in
Mm.
the 1960s, from Jim Baxter to Billy Bremner to later in the decade, Kenny Dalglish, and then on through the 70s with Aberdeen producing all those players that ended up beating Real Madrid, of course, famously in the European Cup Winners' Cup final under Ferguson. It has to have been inspirational, I think, to Scotland this game. And I mean, we're talking here
Yeah.
about the legacy, but its impact, and I think as well that it also triggered a decade of really players in England who wanted to play the ball on the ground and
Mm.
to play with feet rather than with heads. And that was a very different kind of template for the game than was common in English football in the 50s, for example. It was
Yeah.
quite a different, and the hinge is this game, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the things that adds to the game is that, of course, Real Madrid were the more famous side, the favourites to win the competition. But it's interesting that it was being played at Hampden Park, and in the semi-finals, Eintracht Frankfurt had played Rangers off the park. They'd beaten them 12-4 on aggregate, and apparently the Rangers fans had applauded the Eintracht players off the pitch at the end of the second leg. And I think there was a feeling in Glasgow, Real Madrid are in for a difficult night here. They really could lose this because we've seen this Eintracht side, and they're really something because they made mincemeat of Rangers.
Well, it's extraordinary. I
Uh,
think it's a tremendous, it's an extraordinary result in many ways. Yes, you're right, 12-4. They won 6-1 at home, did Eintracht. And then
yeah,
and then they went to Ibrox And of course, I think a young Alex Ferguson would have been sniffing around at this point, wouldn't he? I think he would have been all ears and eyes about what he was going to be.
I think he would have been. I mean,
But normally when you get to semi-finals, by the time the cream has risen to the top, and there's not much to choose between the top four teams, and you get
yeah,
close games. Whereas and by the way, Rangers in that semi-final had every incentive to really perform because the final was going to be played in front
yeah,
of effectively home. I mean, that's a huge incentive, and so.
yes,
But I mean, clearly Eintracht Frankfurt simply played them off the park, and as you say, 6-1 at home, and then they go to Ibrox, and no doubt Rangers are thinking, well, we get a couple of early goals and we're back in this tie. Well, Eintracht scored first and beat them 6-3, and 12-4 for a semi-final is an absurd score, but it does go to
yeah,
show how good Eintracht were, and that in
yeah.
turn, if you watch the game, illustrates how good Real Madrid were because Real Madrid are dominant, aren't they? And I think actually they demoralize Eintracht. I mean, you get to a point in the game when Eintracht can't keep possession, and they feel as if the kind of wind has gone out of their sails, while Real Madrid are in their pomp. So it's a kind of psychological job the Real Madrid do on Eintracht as much as anything else, as much as a physical
Mm.
one. Let's talk about the game itself because
Yeah.
actually Eintracht start off really
Oh,
very well,
they
don't
start
they?
off very well.
I mean, I think they dominate the first half of the first half.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they very nearly score in the first minute, don't they? With the ball, um, they hit a cross where the ball hits the bar,
That's right.
uh, and they go ahead. Um, fair in just under 20
Yeah,
minutes.
that's right. Yeah, 19.
They take the lead,
Yeah.
and they did look the better side.
I mean, the way they
Uh,
take the lead is they break down the right. There's a lot of space. I mean, one of the features of this game,
yeah,
and of actually features of many games at this period, is how much space players have to
yes,
play in. And
yeah,
I think when Eintracht break in the 20th minute or 19th minute, they break down the right. I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's not the right winger because Kress. It looks like it ought to be the right winger, Kress, but
mm,
actually it's Kress who finishes the move with a nice
mm,
slick finish. He takes it
yeah,
on the volley. He beats the defender. So I think it's a bit of a Frank Lampard goal actually, and late arrival
yeah,
in the box, and he just
yeah.
slots it home. It's not nothing particularly devastating, but it's a neat finish. And from that point on, really, I mean, they do actually sustain there because they've broken down the right a lot in the first half of the first half.
Mm.
Eintracht have had 4 or 5 chances down the right. The left back for Real Madrid was that Pochin? I think it might have been.
Yeah,
Not
yes, and
not a particularly
yeah,
well-known name, and but I think there perhaps is a slight weakness there. Well, there's actually where are Real Madrid strong? They're strong in attack, and they now go on to the attack,
yeah.
and that's what begins to make the difference. So um, yes, it's a goal by Di
So
Stefano.
the first couple of goals are by Di Stefano, aren't they?
They are, yes,
Um, and I mean, I think he's somebody who definitely is worth talking about because there are good judges who rate him right up there. I mean, some as the greatest player ever in the opinion of some people. An absolutely phenomenal career. Um, but it's interesting, I think, for the development of football in Spain that he came over from Colombia, and
yeah,
originally both Barcelona and Real Madrid wanted him,
right,
and there was this strange plan whereby he was going to play one season with one club and one with
yes,
the other, and then swap again and again,
yes,
which would have been truly bizarre. But that idea got knocked on the head, and Real Madrid beat Barcelona to get to Stefano, and possibly that really does change the history of European football because I think Di Stefano was that good. And Barcelona also were very strong. That Di Stefano playing for Barcelona might have meant Barcelona winning the first 5 European Cups. I think it could be that much of a difference.
yes, intriguing, yes. Um, because he's a fascinating player in the sense that I mean it's another reminder of how different Real Madrid are from what is going on in England. I can't speak for Scotland at this point, but certainly in England at this point, that it's a cult of the big centre forward, isn't it? And
Yes,
and don't think let's bear in mind that in 1960, did Wolves finish second in the league and won the FA Cup, I think, in 1960. So
that's
that's
right.
in a way,
Yeah.
if you like, that's the competition. And of course, Wolves had been in the European Cup earlier in this competition and had gone out fairly early, I think. But Wolves
Mm.
were exactly a picture of, of wingers breaking down the wing and getting the ball over in the air. And that's really why I have to admit that the photograph behind me is really quite unrepresentative of what was going on in the game because it's
That's a
actually
fair point.
not
Yes.
not 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 only because Puskás appears to be wearing 01 on the back of his shirt, whereas in fact he's number 10. Something to do with the technology, but also
Mm.
because the goalkeeper, I think this must be the only time in the game when the goalkeeper actually has to do what English goalkeepers spend all their lives doing, which is jumping for, he's 10 foot off the ground there. Rather, sorry, the
Mm.
ball is 10 foot off the ground. It's a very sort of English picture, but it's very unrepresentative of this game. But no, Real Madrid are different because Di Stefano is really orchestrating things from somewhere
Yes.
between the centre circle and the D. But there are times when in this game when Di Stefano picks up the ball from the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper, Dominguez,
Yeah.
sends it straight, bowls it straight to
Absolutely.
Di Stefano in the Real Madrid half, and he's attacking
Yeah.
from there. And he quite often attacks from there. I mean, after all, the seventh goal that Real Madrid score which is it's a minute after um, Eintracht Frankfurt have got what was it, a second or the third.
They're second. Yeah.
Um, he attacks from basically from the centre circle. Nobody can lay
Mm.
a glove on him. And
Well, one of Real Madrid's great rivals really was the coach Herrera, who coached Barcelona and then later coached Inter Milan. And there's a lovely quote where he compares Di Stefano with Pele, who obviously was one of
right,
the superstars of football at the time.
yes, yes,
And
yes,
Herrera said if Pele's the violins, Di Stefano's the whole orchestra.
interesting, yes,
Which I think speaks to what you're saying about the way in which he was picking up the ball so deep and controlling the game. So, he'd be referred to as a centre forward, but really he
yes,
was, I mean, did you say he was a midfielder, but he was just close to being the perfect midfielder because he was doing everything.
yes. I mean, he's a number 10 in today's terms. And Pushkat
Mm.
is a number 9, perhaps. But going to return to your orchestra metaphor, isn't he the conductor essentially? And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everything flows through him. And
Mm.
although has he got a left foot? He's extremely right-footed. Okay, the first
Yeah,
goal
he
actually
is.
he does score with the left foot. I think
Mm.
I studied this, and I think it's a left foot finish. It's a little bit difficult to tell, oddly enough. But I think it's a left foot. Thereafter, he really plays most of the match on one foot or with one foot.
Mm.
Um, but there we are. So Real Madrid are level, and so to the second goal, which is a mistake by the Eintracht Frankfurt defense, and then a further where the ball is headed out, but rather weakly. It's headed out actually to the D,
Mm.
and then a goalkeeping spill of a kind that really sort of is pretty unacceptable.
Yeah.
And Di Stefano is as I think I've sort of he reminded me a bit of Jimmy Greaves in the speed with which he nips or Michael Owen,
Yes.
perhaps, the speed with
Yeah.
which he nips into that sees the
Mm.
stray ball. There are a lot of stray balls in the Eintracht Frankfurt penalty area over
Mm.
the game, and that is a particularly well. I think the goal is really given away in many ways, but
Yeah, it
nevertheless,
was a bit.
he's
It was a bit of a soft one, wasn't it? Because of the mistake, the second one.
that's right. The and then the commentator Kenneth Wolstenholme says as we approach half time, 45 minutes, he says Eintracht Frankfurt look as if they need a goal pretty soon, and unfortunately Real Madrid break away down the pitch and get their third, and that's
Which is my favorite goal of the match, the third one.
is it? Yeah,
Um,
go on.
Partly because of what happens in the build-up, because there's a player who I just love watching in this game, Del Sol.
Oh, right.
He's wonderful to watch, and I know I'm not saying Del Sol was man of the match. When with Di Stefano getting a hat trick and Puskas getting four, but there's, sometimes you watch a player and you just love watching him. It's beautiful to watch. And Del Sol is sort of on the left-hand side of the penalty area, and he tries to do, and it doesn't quite come off what Paul Gascoigne did years
Yes,
later
indeed.
against Scotland in the Euros. He's trying to knock the ball over the defender's head, and he doesn't quite pull it off, but he manages to create enough chaos for the ball
Yes.
to fall to Puskas, who really. You mentioned it earlier, Peter. He hits a beautiful strike, doesn't he?
He leathers it into the roof of the net from an acute angle, and it's a stunning finish. And nobody's, I mean, I was thinking to myself, is that is that near post? Here's the goalkeeper not covered his near post, but actually it just goes through the goalkeeper.
It's
The goal,
unstoppable.
nobody, no goalkeeper's going to save that. It's a
Yeah.
formidable goal. It reminded me a little bit of the finish at Puskas in 1953 when
Mm,
Billy Wright was the fireman going to the wrong fire. And there again, Puskás leathers the. Remember this goal? He leathers the ball into the roof of the net
mm,
from close range. But this is a formidable finish, and it's 3-1 at half time, and it looks like it's curtains for Eintracht Frankfurt. So the turnaround. By the way, I think that I say by the way, I don't mean that this is incidental at all. The quality of Real Madrid's play in the from around sort of 35 to 45
yeah.
in minutes is quite stunning, isn't it? They play with such fluency and
Yeah.
flair, such creativity. And I mean, I think later in the game, Kenneth Wolstenholme says that Real Madrid are showing us all the tricks, a little bit patronize, a little bit, not quite the pit, not quite. What they're showing is just bravado and confidence and a joy of
Totally.
playing football in a way that was probably quite alien to English audiences, and was certainly a sort of eye opener of what could be done. And that's part of the. But I mean, I think that those passages where um, they really take the gloves off and play with tremendous flair is those are so exciting and stunning, really. And it does raise the
Mm.
question of what did English football learn? But I think from this game, but perhaps we'll come to that later. But so halftime comes. Go on.
No, no, no. I was just going to say, well, English footballers. I, I'm, I'm, I'm not convinced that it was so much the tactics with Real Madrid as just it was individual ability, and the players were used to playing with each other.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's the most tactically
No.
innovative.
No.
It's just brilliance. Um, the individual players are just so much better
Mm.
than anything. Well, that Eintracht have got, and definitely that was in Britain at the time
And
for
it's fair to
sure.
say that there are a lot of mistakes made. I mean, I'm quite surprised by the amount of time that Real Madrid players had in the box, the number of touches in the box,
Mm.
um, how weak the marking was in the box. I mean, those things that do have to be said. It wasn't a really sort of state-of-the-art piece of defensive work by Eintracht Frankfurt, but nevertheless,
No,
um, the performance of Real Madrid is formidable. Even so, so we go to the second half, and we get first of all, there's a soft penalty for
it's a
obstruction.
strange one, that wasn't it?
Difficult to work out what it's been given for. I'm saying
Yeah,
obstruction.
it was a very strange one. I mean, the one thing that does strike me again, the differences between football then and now was
Yes,
the you know
nobody.
the very what could you say, very mild protests
Yes,
compared to what you'd get now,
yes,
because especially because it was a goal, a penalty that was going to make it 4-1.
yes,
I mean, at 3-1, of course, you fancy Real Madrid to win it. Of course you do. But 3-1, it's still sort of game on. Whereas 4-1 that's probably the goal that seals it.
yes. It's quite a finish by Puskas. I mean, of course, we expect people to score from penalties, but he hits the side netting. I mean, it's really very precise. The goalkeeper
Yeah.
hasn't is not, the goalkeeper doesn't move actually, um, and so And so it is, as you say, that Real Madrid are now 4-1. Puskas actually, there's one player in the Eintracht Frankfurt side who Puskas has come up against before. I don't know if you know
Oh,
know who that is. He's another game that's actually very famous. Um,
oh, was there an Eintracht player in the '54 World Cup final?
they're not in World Cup final, no, but you're getting warm.
Ah, in the group game that Hungary won 8-3.
That's right. And so the implication here is that he
Yes.
said that was 8-3. Go on. Do you know who it was?
You know what? I don't.
It's
Now you've
Alfred
got me.
Pfaff, his name is.
Right.
The sort of midfield player, number 10. And he was in the German, yeah, he was in the German side that lost 8-3 to Hungary in 1954. So in many ways, this is not a bad result because things are getting a bit better. It's now 7-3 this time. So things could be next time it'll be 6-3. Who knows? So they did play. By the way, another interesting feature of the Eintracht Frankfurt side is that one of these players will resurface in 1966 in England.
Oh, was there a member of the? Ah, right. Which one was that?
He's a member of the squad. He does play. He plays in the semi-final. He plays for Germany in the semi-final against Russia, and it's his only game of the 1966 World Cup, and he doesn't really. That's his last game actually for Germany. His last international game.
Oh, okay.
It's the left back Lustig. Is that his name? Um,
Well,
Let me see what.
the left back,
Sorry,
not
Lutz. Yeah, Friedel Lutz. Sorry, right. Is he right back, isn't he?
right
Friedel
back, I
Lutz.
think. Yeah.
And he replaces I never know how to pronounce this. Hotgiz in the
Right.
German side in '66. So he has a distinguished future ahead of him.
Mm.
And that is
But it's
interesting.
maybe just saying just a little bit more about Puskas. That I mean, it's quite remarkable. You could say that most the two greatest football matches in the UK between the end of the Second World War and the '66 World
Yeah.
Cup both heavily featured Puskas because,
Yes.
of course, there's the
100%.
the famous or infamous Hungarian
Mm.
6-3 win at Wembley, in which Puskas was arguably the star turn, and and this game where he was certainly one of the star turns, and 4 goals. Um, is it my imagination? Was he a lot fitter in 1960 than in 1953? He looks
Well,
it.
he looks a lot thinner, doesn't he? Or he looks in
Yeah,
better shape. He's
yeah,
not that mobile in 53. You're right. But he does.
yeah.
What does he score two in 53?
I
And he
think
gets
so.
four
Yes,
here.
yeah, yeah. And he scores for it. And in the Hungarian side, he did have a big centre forward, a centre forward. Or how to put it? I mean, I know Hijakuti was the deep lying centre
Yeah.
forward, but he had somebody else. Puskas had somebody else up front with him. Whereas here, is he really the most advanced
Yes. Yes, he is.
uh, player in the Real Madrid side?
And his performance in the first half, he's a
Del
little bit
Sol
anonymous.
Del Sol and Di Stefano most of the time would be deeper
Yes,
with two wingers either side
that's
of
right.
of,
Yes,
of Puskas.
yes.
But I mean, what a player! Because again, we were talking about what all round ability Di Stefano had, and Puskas was a great goal scorer. But his all round game was great as well, wasn't it?
It was. And you were right about being a great goal scorer. His goals have certain emphasis about them. He buries the ball in the net.
Mm.
Is it the fifth or the sixth goal when he swivels in the box? I mean, the ball breaks to him sort of 12
Yes.
yards out and he swivels
Yeah.
and buries it with his left foot.
Yeah.
Um, but the header, I think, is interesting because actually, so the header does that bring us to 4-1 or 5-1? I'm getting confused by the, yeah, it's
5-1
5-1,
is the
isn't it?
header, isn't it?
And it's not a great ball by Gento. It's quite low, but again,
Mm.
you can't help noticing that the German defense is sort of they're not in the they're not where they need to they're not where they're needed basically. I mean they're there, but they're not
Yeah.
where they're needed. But it's quite a stooping header that Puskás puts in there, and that brings it to 5, as you said, and that's his hat trick. My reading is that his goals were left foot penalty, header, and left foot.
Yeah.
And I think Di Stefano is right foot. sorry, his left foot, then two right foots. So
Mm.
it's so I mean, they're rather predictable, really. Puskás scores with his left foot, and Di Stefano scores with his right.
Yeah.
Um, it's 6-1 when he spins in the box and buries the ball in the net with his left foot. And then that triggers a bit of a comeback. Now, Eintracht Frankfurt, I mean, insofar as a comeback is possible when you're 6-1 behind, Eintracht Frankfurt are a semi-professional side, are they? They
Yeah.
play in a
So
regional league. There's no
yes,
there's no German Premier League or no German First Division at this stage.
that's right. So the Bundesliga didn't start until 1963, and up until then, there were there was a national championship, but it was drawn from the regional league. So you had regional leagues and then a kind of playoff system. And in 1959, Eintracht qualified from their region and ended up playing a final to decide the national championship in Berlin against I think the side who I think are regarded as their sort of local rivals, Kickers Offenbach.
Yes, yes, that's right.
Uh,
Yes,
and it's the only time Eintracht have ever won the German championship.
right.
Uh, and they went on to be founder members of the Bundesliga.
Yes.
But yeah, but German league football wasn't what you would think it would be until, really quite late.
No, it's extraordinary. I mean, if you think that um, they won the '54 World Cup with this regional leagues. I mean, it's
Mm.
known as the Miracle of Bern, and of course, it was something of a miracle. Um, but it's very odd. I mean, I wonder because some of the German players are listed as having other occupations. For example, Meyer, the left winger,
Yes.
of whom Kenneth Wolstenholme says he's had a wretched game, and he had a bit of a mare.
Mm.
He's down as a construction technician, which I presume means a builder.
Yeah, no, if I understand it rightly, Peter, it sounds a really odd thing to say. But from what I understand the rules, they really didn't want to have full-time professionals at this point in time. They had a maximum wage which was pretty low, and I believe there was a rule that players had to have a different job.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Stein is the excellent centre forward is down as an innkeeper. Oh, rather a charming image.
As a good
Yes, if we
German
have
joke.
publicans in this country, that's not quite
Yeah.
as exotic.
Yeah.
But there, it's but so Alfred Pfaff is uh, is given the opportunity to go and play in Spain, but he turns it down. His wife doesn't want him to go. Um, Again, these guys uh, appear to have other professions. For all that, they make a tremendous rally actually in the last 15 minutes, I think.
Mm.
Um, and they scored two goals to bring some measure of respectability. Another record, the most goals in a European Cup final.
Yeah.
Puskás, most goals by a single player. Um, numerous numerous records, and an audience of 70 million, which
Mm.
across Europe, which uh, was able to see what was possible on a football pitch, and I'm
Yeah.
sure it had a huge impact on
And the people there, I mean, we mentioned Alex Ferguson earlier, and
yeah,
he was at the game.
mm,
It's strange to think, isn't it? It was actually the game was being played on what was then his home ground because
yes,
he was at Queen's Park,
amazing, yes,
and bizarrely, Queen's Park played at used Hampden Park as their home ground.
yes,
Uh, and the great journalist Brian Glanville, he wrote about the game. He was blown away by it. Saying it was football of a different level.
yes.
Which I mean, I think it really was. It's extraordinary football to watch.
It is, and I think the spirit behind it, the spirit behind the flair and creativity, is a kind of joy in being young
Yeah,
and fit and playing football. And who
yeah,
wouldn't feel joy about that?
yeah.
And
yeah.
it puts the sort of
And
modern
mm,
cynicism a little bit to shame, I think, because they're playing
yes,
for the pleasure and
yeah,
they're deriving immense pleasure from it, and they're getting pleasure from their own genius.
yeah. It, maybe it's interesting. You were talking about sort of the inadequacies in the German defending,
Yeah.
and it makes me wonder. I don't think this game quite marks the end of an era. I mean, it does in one sense, of course, in that Real Madrid had won their five in a row, and this was the last of those five.
Mm.
And in the next season, they went out in the first round to their great rivals Barcelona. Um, but but the next couple of finals were won by Benfica, who were
Mm.
also a fantastic attacking side. And the final of 1962 was an absolute classic. Puskas scored a hat-trick again in the final,
Wow.
but Benfica still won 5-3. But it's maybe that game that's the end of an era because after that,
Mm.
the Italian sides won
Mm.
three for three seasons, um, and the Inter side, Inter Milan side that won in 64 and 65, they they really were good defensively,
Mm.
and
Mm. Mm.
maybe that's why maybe they were able to do
Mm.
what Eintracht Frankfurt weren't. They were supremely well organised, played Catenaccio. In 64, they beat Real Madrid in the final. So Real Madrid certainly were, remained very consistent. They lost the final to 62 and 64, won it again in 66.
Yes.
But there was something of a shift, I think, with the Inter Milan side winning it a couple of
Right.
years in a row.
Yes. Does that explain why the battle? No, it's a curious thing that Eintracht Frankfurt are not only the first German team to reach a European final, they're actually the first Northern European team to reach a European Cup final. So far, we've had four tournaments. This is the fifth. And so far, they've
Yes,
all been, I mean, the opponents have been either, Real Madrid won the lot. The opponents have been either two from France or two from Italy. But
yes,
then by the end of the 60s, triggered by by Celtic, of course, in '67, we then run into a long period of Northern dominance, where I
yes.
suppose a more physical kind of a game, perhaps. I don't know. Certainly, uh, Manchester United, then Ajax, then Bayern, then Liverpool, and these teams are now dominating in a way that had seemed impossible back in the 50s. I don't know if they
Yeah,
draw
I
a
mean,
legacy from
I
Real
mean,
Madrid.
it's strange because it's Celtic. You're right. I mean, they were the first Northern European team to win it, and yet, in a way, in some ways, did they hark back to Real Madrid a little bit in that that was the triumph of very attacking football.
Yeah,
So maybe it was that the the Northern Europeans learned something of the attacking flair of Real Madrid, but maybe combined it with perhaps better, some defensive nous as well
yes,
and some physicality.
yes. I mean, it's fair to say we're not saying that the Real Madrid defense wasn't able to function, although it's
No,
clearly the best.
yeah, I mean,
The
they've got a centre half who actually,
yes,
the time we're talking is recently died, Santa
yes,
Maria,
yes.
who, Uruguay,
The wall,
he was a great player.
yes.
Um,
Well, there we are, Carl. I mean, it's a fascinating match, and it's a really interesting. So much comes out of that, and I think it's such a provocative, match in the in the sense of it being so different from what was familiar to British eyes. Kenneth Wolstenholme, the commentator, says in the course of it that people said you couldn't play football on these pitches, but what are they playing now? And it's as if to say, you can get the ball down, you can get the
yeah,
ball down and pass.
that's right.
And I'm sure that many people felt that about English football, and indeed to many ways in the 1960s that began to emerge as
Mm.
sort of definite departure from the way that football had been played in the 1950s. So there we are. It's a fascinating match, well worth watching, and we'll be back next time with another edition of And Did Those Feet. So cheerio, Carl.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks,
Bye.
then. Bye bye.